I'm Michael Darmanin, CEO of SellState, and today we're going to be looking at the 5 steps you must take when evaluating resumes to try and ensure you actually do hire the perfect candidate. Step number 1, we're going to start by looking at the instant fails. Looking at resumes can be extremely overwhelming. If you've done a great job with the job ad and you've done an excellent job posting it in all the correct places, chances are you're going to have a number of resumes to go through and evaluate, and that can be a daunting task. So the first thing we're going to do is look at what I consider the instant fails. And to start with, let's look at spelling and grammar. Most positions within your organization, you're going to want people who pay attention to detail. And if you think about it, a resume is somebody's first and best impression when trying to impress someone, impress an employer, impress a talent scout. If somebody has not taken the time to proofread their resume and there are spelling mistakes or grammatical errors, things of that nature, I'm sorry, but those are instant fails. You move those out of the pile. You do not want to interview that person. Sometimes you might think, but the resume looks good and maybe let's take a chance on it. But if they're sloppy with their first impression, something that they have plenty of time to plan around and prepare, what is that going to tell you about what they're going to do when they're overwhelmed with projects or they've got a lot going on in work and they're in a rush? As far as I'm concerned, if there are spelling or grammatical errors, that is an instant fail. You just remove those resumes from the pile. All right, keeping with the instant fails or the things that are going to help you sort very quickly, what you're going to want to do when applications come in is you're also going to want to send a response asking some questions.
Do you have any other questions for me, counselor?
Now, those questions should pertain specifically to the job. Maybe it's the tasks, maybe it's certain things. Like, for example, if your position is an in-office position, some people are going to be thinking, well, maybe I can do this from home. If that's not the case, you make sure you clarify that with the questions. So one thing you may ask is, are you willing to be in the office Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 type thing? Are you able to travel? Are you able to work weekends? Whatever could pertain to the job. How much experience do you have with certain things? Now, some of this is things that may be covered on the resume, but it doesn't hurt in asking some specific questions. And there's 2 reasons for that. Number 1, you get further clarity on the position. You get further clarity whether the candidate is willing to do what you're requiring. And the candidate gets better clarity as to what exactly the position is and maybe what it is not. The second thing is, believe it or not everyone's going to answer those questions. So if you send out questions and people don't respond, you know right away that that's not somebody you're interested in looking at. Even if they've got what you think is an excellent resume, if they're not even willing to acknowledge that first email, that's a bad start and you're going to need to disqualify that person. The next thing you want to do for your instant fails is send a list of questions to clarify the position and what its requirements are. All right, along the same lines as answering questions, which are going to provide clarity, and sometimes those can actually be included when you're using job sites. A lot of times they'll allow you to actually build some questions in that can be answered when the application comes in. So along the same lines, the next thing we're going to do is we're actually going to have them perform some form of a task. Now, this doesn't have to be a big or complicated thing, but it could be as simple as requesting additional references, something simple like that. Again, if they don't respond to this or if they respond incorrectly, so for example, let's say you ask for an additional 3 references or an additional 5 references, whatever the number might be, and they send back 1 or 2, well, that is not following the instruction correctly. If they don't respond to that, then again, you know that they're not the right candidate. Much the same way as we're going to ask them some questions to help clarify the position and help us filter, we're also going to be asking them to perform a simple task. Again, could be as simple as sending in more references, because that will help determine who's actually interested in the position and who just happened to be applying to a number of spots and they're not really paying attention to where they applied. Very important that you get them to do a small, simple task. All right, the next important step in evaluating your candidates and evaluating the resumes is actually to have them fill out a personality profile.
It's your personality. What? The reason I'm leaving and the reason the others are. I'm affable!
Now, there's a lot of different personality profiling systems that are out there. Some are more simple, some are a little more complicated, but it's very important that you have them do this. Now, be clear, a personality profiling, there's no wrong answers on this. We're just trying to get to know the tendencies, likes, and behaviors in general of the person. So let me give you a simple example. If you were to compare a salesperson to somebody who's in accounting, if you look at a group of salespeople, you're going to see a lot of common traits. They're very outgoing. They're very good at meeting strangers. They're very good at communicating with people, for example, but they tend not to be as good with paperwork. It just doesn't seem to be in their skill set to the same degree. On the other hand, when you look at people who are good at accounting, they tend to be excellent with paperwork and details and making sure that everything is exact, because with accounting, you can't be close enough. You have to be exact. Whereas you don't necessarily want somebody from accounting to jump out and try and lead your sales department, because a lot of times their skills are better suited to being behind the computer screen, not in front with people. Now, as you might be thinking, well, I know somebody who's actually very good at bookkeeping who actually is great at sales, and I know somebody who's great at sales who's actually pretty good with paperwork. So again, this isn't a situation where you're going to completely determine or eliminate somebody based on this. However, depending on what you're hiring for, this could be a good indicator whether the person is going to be a good fit and happy for the role. If, for example, you're looking to hire somebody in administration, you're going to want to make sure that they come out with a personality that suits the tasks at hand. You're not going to want to take a salesperson or somebody who's got those typical profiling points and shove them behind a desk all day and say, here, sit at this computer and work through spreadsheets and do this paperwork and worry about the details on a contract. It's just, even if they're able to do it, the likelihood is they're not going to enjoy doing it, and after a while, they're going to get bored and want to move on. So once again, you're going to want to take a look and try and see if you can align the personality of the candidate with the personality that is expected to best suit the role. This should help with longevity. The happier the person is in the role, the more likely they are to stay in the role and excel at the role. All right, so now we've actually gone through 4 different steps you need to do before getting to the 5th step, which is, let's take a look at their resumes and look at what their past experience is.
Obviously, you two have no experience.
So this one seems like the most obvious thing to do, and this is actually what many people start with. They grab the resume, they look at the experience, and they kind of go from there. But as you see, you can actually do a lot of filtering, so you get rid of a lot of resumes out of the pile before you have to really start getting down to it and evaluating and comparing which of these candidates have the correct backgrounds that we need or the experience that we're looking for. So the 5th step, which is obviously extremely important, is to look at the resume itself and determine who has the prior experience you're looking for that you think will help them best suit the role you're hiring for. All right, so what we did today was we looked at the 5 steps you must do in evaluating resumes to ensure you get the perfect candidate. Do you have other steps in mind? Do you have some steps that you feel you can cut out? Do you have reasons why you think you can cut out some of these steps, or steps that we perhaps should add and include? Be sure to comment below. If you liked what you saw, be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We've got great stuff on here. Share this video with your friends and family. Until next time, this is Michael with Sell State.